Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Hypnovision Studios. Today, we are going to be discussing the courage to be disliked. That is the topic of today. If you've ever felt guilty for setting boundaries with someone for protecting your peace, this video is for you. Now, we're going to dive into this and I'm going to share a few things, and I'm also going to tie in some of Neville Goddard's teachings into this to really highlight the difference between your inner feelings and the outer world and the feelings of others around you, and why the boundaries truly do matter for your own internal happiness. So with that, let's dive in. So what are boundaries? Boundaries are not just about saying no to people. Boundaries are also about being able to speak your truth about why these boundaries are being set. That's probably one of the biggest things that gets overlooked. The cause and effect and reactions to others when you speak the truth may seem like a negative thing, but if you withhold what is making discomfort within you, it becomes a dis-ease. And this will be highlighted as we move along, why it is so important for those boundaries to be set. So when we talk about boundaries, we also have to understand that our inner nervous system is responding to every stimulation that happens in the sensory input of our reality. And what do I mean by that? Some of the sensory input could be the things that we hear, the things that we smell, and the things that change the chemical composition of our body itself. So when we talk about boundaries, it's not just about saying, oh, I don't like this person. It's a preference, so let me talk bad about them, or let me just do something mean or rude or ugly towards them because of a personal preference. Boundaries is more about understanding and setting a perimeter around yourself that you can either allow things in or you can respectfully decline. So it is not so much about being rude and ugly to other people, but you also have to have the courage to stand your ground. When you say that something is bothering you, you need to be able to speak it out in a place of safety. Now, if you are in certain environments where you speak up and you find yourself being ridiculed because of other people that share those similar type things that have crossed your boundary, suddenly you can find yourself being ostracized. And you could also find yourself second guessing and questioning your own reality, because this is a group dynamic that you're starting to deal with. We'll try to break this down a little bit more. I've done a video a few months ago where I talked about how attention and focus works in group settings when multiple people can come together and agree on something. Now they have magnified that experience or either idea to a point where others are in an alignment of such things. So the courage to be disliked is challenging people's comfort zones. So when it comes to the courage to be disliked, sometimes it means saying things that make you feel uncomfortable yourself. Because here's the key, guys. Here's something that is hidden about this whole concept. When you say something that you don't like, you may fear that you're offending someone else, and then you don't say it. You end up tolerating behavior or actions that are actually abrasive to you because you won't speak up and say what it is that's bothering you. Sometimes we as humans want to be liked by others, and we are willing to tolerate things that are not healthy for us in order to be liked. So when it comes to being able to speak up and say, hey, I don't like this, it is causing harm to my nervous system, then we are tolerating and allowing these conditions to go into our nervous system and create those changes. We are by definition not taking charge and not being accountable for taking care of our own body and soul, our own temple, which is part of creation. So let's dive a little bit deeper into the mystery of the nervous system, how boundaries really do create the change in your inner atmosphere for positivity. So let's do this like this. The courage to be disliked is the highest form of self-honoring. The feeling is the secret. This is by Neville Goddard, and I'm going to show you how boundaries have a relationship with this understanding of Neville Goddard's teachings. Your inner state creates your outer world. So we are talking about the nervous system, we are talking about the mental state, and we are talking about the emotional state of the body. Now let's clarify this a little bit. The mental state and the emotional state may all seem like one giant big part of self, but there are actually two different aspects of self. The mentality or the thoughts, and then the emotions and feelings are two different aspects. Although they appear as one, you can be thinking a certain way and feeling something completely different. So when we get into situations where we have to set boundaries and we are not wanting to speak out against something that is causing us internal discomfort, we are actually selling ourselves short, and we are not honoring ourself, our heritage, our ancestors, and our own temple. So the courage to be disliked means saying things at times that seem uncomfortable. That's not a bad thing. It's not negative to speak up. And if you find yourself being ostracized because you spoke up, then that is probably more revealing about the environment that you're in than it is you speaking up. When you allow disrespect or chaos, you plant seeds of imbalance. And I've spoke about this before, guys. Let's really break this down. There's a couple of things that can cross over your boundaries that most people do not ever really consider or think about. One of those things is what you hear. The other thing is what you smell. So when it comes to things like touch, that's another sensory. That's not so much the same type boundary as smells or things that you hear. Yes, people can be touchy-feely in times where you may feel it's inappropriate, and that would be a form of physical boundary. Your physical boundary is being crossed. But what about the spiritual boundary? What about the energetic boundary? What about those type conditions that can create disharmony within the nervous system itself? These things are very real, and that is something I'm going to dive in. So when it comes to, let's take the sensory of smell, for example. There are certain fragrances that have volatile chemicals in them. There are other smells that are natural and have no chemicals in them. So this is not so much about a preference as it is the interaction when something crosses the blood-brain barrier. That goes directly into the body. That is a big boundary being crossed. So this is not so much about something that is a preference as it is something that is causing a huge discomfort in the body. There are certain smells and fragrances that can cause headaches, that can cause you to have reactions to them. Those type things, if you experience them, you need to speak out on those things. Ideally, being able to go to the source and being able to express what it is that is causing the discomfort and asking for some sort of understanding in the situation. But that's not always going to be a case where you can solve it that way. And if you find yourself in those type situations, it can be very tough. And it's also something that is very hard to tolerate and ultimately will start to have a negative impact on the individual that is experiencing this. So it's very important to be able to speak up and speak out when these type things are happening. Also, when it comes to the sensories and boundaries, we can also look at the hearing aspect of things. When you are constantly hearing things from others, when they are talking about people or talking down or pointing out bad things about other people, that can also have a negative impact. Because once you come to the realization that if they will do it to this person, they will do it to you, then you understand something. You don't want to be around these people. You don't want to be associated with these people. And it doesn't mean that you think that they're a bad person. It doesn't mean that you think they're evil. Setting a boundary sometimes just means that you don't want to be just like them. You know, like Kendrick Lamar said, they not like us. They not like us. Truly rings a bell here. It's like all I can think about in this moment. They are not like us. So when you set a boundary, sometimes people feel rejected. Sometimes people take it hard on their ego. And this can form what is known as revenge fantasy. This actually ties back into the Neville Goddard teachings, where he speaks about the mental conversations. An argumentative person will cling, hold on, and have resentment built up inside, and they will continue to rescind these mental conversations. So if a person's not able to communicate what it is in response, if you speak up and say that something is causing you discomfort within your body, and they take it as an attack, this can create what is known as a revenge fantasy in that person, where they will sit around and ruminate, and they will ponder, and they will keep reliving, keep bringing up this emotional, what they feel like is an attack for you speaking up. So sometimes when we speak up, we can be misunderstood. Some people will intentionally misunderstand because a lack of accountability, or either the whole concept of acknowledging something means that they have to change. And some people, when they are very much in their ego, change is very abrasive because of being comfortable in the place and energy that you're in. Some people take it very personal when you speak up. There have been times in my life where I have parted ways with people, and I have told them very clearly why I was doing so. And I understand what the revenge fantasy is all about. So it is not something that I just made up out of air. We can actually look at definitions. We can do research and understand that a revenge fantasy is not just a concept. It is not just an idea. The whole understanding of revenge fantasy is, let me see that person again. Let them say one more thing to me. Let them do X, Y, and Z, and I'm going to let them hold it, right? So this type dynamic, you will sit around and start to point out and pick at every single negative aspect and try to magnify everything and just take it over the top. So revenge fantasies are actually more evident of the internal state of another person than it is for you. When you don't want to argue with people, it doesn't mean that you are just tolerant of everything. When you don't want to argue with people, it doesn't mean that you are weak. It means that you value your peace more than you value arguing with people. And when it comes to the inner alchemy and changing lead into gold, the more that you practice this type stuff and start to understand what is really going on inside the nervous system, all of this stuff starts to make sense. There is no one on the outside of you that truly can affect you once you go in and set an internal boundary with yourself, that you will not allow certain things to be in your atmosphere. So you can become cold to those people. That is how they see you. And that is triggering to them. Whether it is something that is intentional or not, you have to do what is right for you. Everyone does. Every individual person has to come to that understanding that they have to do what is right for them. So I want to really hone in on this when we talk about the inner conversations and the inner fantasies of all men and women. So the mental conversations do play a huge role. Inner arguments and revenge fantasies carry power. Why? Because the individual person who is in that revenge fantasy is sitting there whipping up their own internal system. They're whipping up their nervous system, and they are generating their own emotions. This is what you start to understand after you have learned to set boundaries, maintain those boundaries, and you yourself have learned to find peace within your own body. You will understand the difference of those boundaries and how it truly does change the dynamic in your own nervous system, because your peace is the most valuable thing. Your happiness is your most valuable thing. And that is probably why Neville Goddard's book is called The Secret is the Feeling. So tell them how you really feel from a place of genuine honesty. And if someone doesn't like it, then they don't respect you. It is pretty simple. So the understanding of these conversations is not just about telling someone that you don't like them because of a preference. Maybe you don't like their hair, but that's not a reason to set a boundary. Maybe you don't like the way they dress, but that's not a reason to set a boundary. Maybe they do have a fragrance and it doesn't affect your nervous system. that's not a reason to make a big deal. But if it does cross that blood-brain barrier, cause discomfort, gives you a headache, for example, or maybe that scent lasts for hours and on the same amount of intensity. So those would be reasons that is genuinely okay to speak up and say, hey, this is giving me a headache. Would you mind not wearing this when you're around me or during certain hours? That's perfectly fine. But when we get into these situations where you speak up, for example, like what I just said, and the person responds, fuck you, this is my life, I will do what I want to do. That is a huge sign of disrespect, not to just you, but to how they treat other people. It is a lack of accountability, a lack of being able to respond or responsibility to those in the other environment. When we are in places that are public places that are shared, there has to be some kind of moral code of conduct. And if we are not able to respect other people's boundaries, then how can we expect someone to respect our own boundaries? That is something to think about here. So, revenge fantasies may feel good at the moment, but it keeps you stuck. You're not healing, you're rehearsing the pain. You're reliving the pain. You are constantly dwelling in the pain, especially when you start to understand that a revenge fantasy is over something that has already happened. It has already come and gone, meaning it is in the past tense. So when we hold revenge fantasies, we are holding on to the past, and we are holding on to the past tension, right? Tension in the body. It is also past tense. Because if you want to come back 3 months later and argue over something that happened 3 months ago, then you have been holding on to that tension in your body for months on end. Who has it really hurt? It has hurt the person that held on to the revenge fantasy more than the person who spoke out about needing to set a boundary around a situation. So, as an individual point of view, the quicker you learn this for yourself, the quicker that you are able to adjust your own inner atmosphere to that of peace, love, and joy. So we all have this ability to understand, right, what is being said to us. If we slow down and quit being so quick-witted to respond, that is called being emotionally reactive. When we feel like we are constantly on guard, being defensive, and we don't understand what is going on because we never take the time to listen, process before we respond. We've already formulated a response before we heard what was being said. So, boundaries is very important. I myself have had to say things to people that made me cry, literally made me cry, because being able to speak up and say these things and try to separate what is personal, what is actually setting off alarm bells in my nervous system was very hard because, you know, I do understand the human condition to want to be liked by as many people as possible, especially in certain environments where we need to be liked by people to sell a product, to be able to achieve a goal. But there's also a form of respect that sometimes we may not always agree on things, and we may not always feel the same way about things. So the feeling is secret, right? We start to speak out, and then we find ourselves in an argument situation. And if you're the type like me who doesn't like to argue with people, that can be a slippery slope into people pleasing or just self-isolation, which for me, myself, I've spent 3 years alone. And I point this out because setting boundaries was something that I needed to do in my own life, which is why I'm even making this video in the first place. Boundaries are important. And for me, myself, understanding all the times that I try to encourage people that they can do something, that they do have the ability to do some of the same things that I do. Those type things, when I found that people met me with resistance, I can't, I'm not able to, so-and-so wouldn't like it if I did that with you. Those type things I had to understand and not take personal. When I found myself trying to prove to other people that something was real or something was possible, anything is possible. And I found myself going above and beyond over and over and over, constantly raising the bar, you understand a level of codependency when you start to do things for other people instead of holding them accountable or either setting a boundary and saying, if that is the case, then I cannot deal with you. I cannot be a part of your life. I cannot allow you to attach yourself to me in an emotional way, and this become a back and forth emotional attachment. So the last 3 years of being alone has really highlighted to me the internal nervous system of self, being genuine and authentic with what I am feeling in order to release the emotional aspects of it. This is the law of detachment, to detach from the outcome. If you don't like me, it's okay. I'm not going to sit around and try to make you like me. And if it is a personal preference, oh well. If it's something that I'm doing that is causing you harm, let me know and I will try to take accountability. I will try to make an adjustment. I've always tried to be that way, but I've been around people who are more stubborn when it comes to respecting my boundaries. And I had to sit around and ask myself why. I journaled on why, and I came back with a lot of conclusions that I was tolerating a lot of things that I would want for myself, but was afraid to speak out. So some of that I do understand, which is why I'm saying this. The courage to be disliked means sometimes that it's not about hurting another person's feelings. It's about finding that genuine common ground. And if we can't find it, then what is the point of doing what it is we are doing together? It makes no sense. Get it? Sensory input, the 5 sensory input. So we are creating always the conditions in which we are experiencing. And if we are not paying attention to what we are saying, how we are responding, if we are emotionally charged and we are emotionally guarded towards everyone, then sometimes our own responses, our own reactivity is furthering those conditions and feeding them to keep them going. So like the rumination, the mental conversations that we have with others, when we sit around angry and we project that onto someone, we may start to take other things that have nothing to do with that person and project them onto that person. We may feel rejected and feel like we have to seek revenge in some fashion to set the thing right. There's a saying, hurt people hurt people. So what do you think is happening there? Someone else wants you to feel the pain and discomfort that they feel from you speaking out. And people who are in petty mindsets oftentimes take that type of mentality. I'm going to take it upon myself to seek revenge to make sure and ensure that you feel the same way that I felt because of an action or a cause and effect. One of the 7 laws of the Hermetics is the law of cause and effect, or causality, meaning that every cause has an effect and every effect first had a cause. So the energy that we put out, we are always getting back. And the understanding of the mirror reflection. People have to understand the difference in narcissistic mirroring versus mirroring and self-reflection. There is a huge difference here. This I can best describe when it comes to situations like when you first meet someone. Those first few months, everything is fine. Like you find so much that you have common ground on. But after a few months, the energy dynamic starts to change because there is a mirroring aspect that is going on. I want to know, are you like me? You want to know, are you like me? So the narcissistic mirroring will find all of these common grounds as a place to bond over. Now, when we start to see things that we don't agree with and we're not in alignment with, that's when that energy dynamic starts to shift and the narcissistic mirroring starts to fade. However, the difference in self-reflecting and self-mirroring reflection would be to understand what you are causing and how it is affecting you, and how what is affected, where did the cause come from? So if we learn from our own actions that maybe it was me that caused the effect that I felt, maybe when I spoke about a certain situation, maybe I was in a more mindset of preference. Maybe I didn't like a person's hairstyle, so I picked on their hairstyle, and that was a form of picking and mocking another person instead of saying, I don't like the fragrance because it is giving me a headache. There's a big difference in how you look at this stuff. When you start to understand and define things, you start to see that, okay, well, this is a preference over here, but this is something that actually causes me discomfort in my nervous system, and it is very triggering to the chemical balance in my body. So being liked and being triggered because of being disliked is a bit of a different aspect and dynamic in energy. So an argumentative person, an angry person, will always find some kind of fault on the outside of them to project that anger onto, like a blank canvas. That's why I say sometimes when a person has a revenge fantasy, they will try to take other things that have nothing to do with you and push those onto you and project those to try to maximize the amount of damage and discomfort they can cause to you. It's very real, guys. I'm not trying to make stuff up here. The whole dynamic between the inner self and the outer world is a very real thing. And a lot of Neville Goddard's work really highlights this, how the inner worlds are creating our outer realities. And so they are not like us, or either I am not like them. It is not a dynamic of me against the world, or me against a group dynamic, or a group dynamic against another group. We are all human. We are all here on this earth sharing this physical plane of existence. However, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, that is a whole nother dynamic of plane of existence. Our imagination itself is something that is uniquely to us. How we are seeing the world through that first person view. We have the two physical eyes, but we have the mental mind's eye, or the eye of imagination. So the perspective is unique, but you can also take on other people's perspectives. You can put yourself in someone else's shoes. And I have often done that because as a child, that's what I was always taught to do. Put yourself in someone else's shoes. Does the action that you did to that person, would it feel good if it was done to you? So I've always gone through life with this consideration of what I am doing to someone else, or would be doing to someone else, how that could affect them. So I do take those as considerations, but I've also had to learn to set those boundaries, to speak up. So sometimes we also understand we get in these dynamics with people who cannot speak up, who will not openly express their emotions or their feelings. And they will treat you differently because you can't read between the lines, because you didn't pick up on what they did not say. Then that becomes a sour point of the relation itself. You're not a mind reader. You're not here to try to figure out for other people that which they cannot speak openly. But you can give them safe space to be themselves. And that really does require everyone involved to slow down. Just simply slow down. Take a deep breath. Allow yourself to hear what is being said. Sit with it for just a minute and then respond. There's nothing wrong with taking an extra minute before responding. Because if you find yourself caught off guard and you feel like you're about to erupt and have an emotional response, now we are amping up that energy, we are magnifying it. So two people arguing, if neither person wants to be the bigger person and try to cool it down, it is like creating steam from water. Eventually, you're going to create enough pressure from that steam where something is going to blow. And the emotional aspect of the body is 70 to 80% water. So you can use the analogy, the metaphor of steam, from water turning into steam in these situations. It makes a whole lot of sense. And also water holds memory. So we want to purify the water, right? The holy water. We want to become like the Holy Ghost. When someone comes towards you and they come in hot and heavy and try to put you on a defensive backdrop, right? You have to understand to allow those things to move through you Let yourself understand what was just projected at you. Allow yourself to use your imagination to understand what the feeling is being created when someone is projecting in and across your boundaries. Meaning, it is not just what is seen, it is what is heard and what is felt. So we start to understand that empath, right? The empath, the inbound, what is coming in. So highly sensitive people can often be labeled as troublemakers, as someone who is negative because they speak the truth. We get around situations, environments where, you know, there's a saying to mind your own business. Don't worry about what the other person's doing. Don't keep up with the Joneses. But there are some things that are just too noticeable that it is hard for you to put your blinders on and not see. It is hard for you to stop breathing and not smell something. It is hard for you to plug your ears when you need to listen, but there are other people in the environment that are constantly crossing that boundary. All of this stuff really does really go into what is creating your reality and how you are experiencing said reality. We all have different viewpoints on what reality even is, what the perception of reality is. And we understand through the teachings of Neville Goddard that we emotionally filter our reality based upon our feelings. So when you are observing without reaction, now you can basically cut that filter off and kind of see the world in a neutral point of view. So the imagination is said to be neutral. It is how we are charging either positive or negative the imagination, which is how the emotional filter is working. The concept of being dominantly positive or negative when we look at our outlook of life itself. I could look around and see nothing but doom and gloom, or I could look around and see all of these wonderful opportunities on earth and how great nature is, how great the universe is, how great God's creation really is. Or again, that negative outlook where it's just a pessimist outlook on things. You cannot allow someone who is unhappy in their own life to come in and emotionally attach themselves to you and then drag you down into their same point of view of reality. That is a form of weak boundaries. That is a form of allowing others to control you from the outside. That is, in essence, unacceptable, really. It's truly unacceptable. So when you come to the point of putting boundaries, you may find yourself being pushed to the point of too far, too much. Now you yourself have that emotional outburst. And this is the other hidden aspect of revenge fantasy itself. If you set a boundary with a person and they don't like it, maybe they don't understand why you said it, even if you clearly spoke to them why you were setting a boundary. They may take it upon themselves to continuously amp up and get a response from you, to evoke a response from you. And that could lead you into you having the emotional outburst. And then that person saying, see, I knew it was this person all along. It was not ever me. It's just because this person doesn't like me. There is a difference in not liking a person and simply understanding that you can't be around a person because of the way they behave. So it's not about disliking a person personally. It's about their behavior and their actions and their energy and how it is creating the vibration in the environment around you. So much like a spider web, if a fly lands on a spider web, it sends out tingles all through that spider web, like the spidey senses, right? The spider knows that something has landed in its web. That is the same thing when we start allowing ourselves to really understand the environment without projecting onto it. So the secret is truly the feeling. It really makes a lot of sense here. The mental conversations make a lot of sense here. We are either arguing and obsessing over revenge or why this person doesn't like me or what did I do to cause this person to cut ties with me. It is really an interesting dynamic when once you yourself start to understand boundaries on a much emotional, deeper level. Everything happens for a reason. So that is the cause and effect of life. Okay, so I'm going to close out this video with giving a few definition type examples. Revenge fantasy. The definition of that is imaginary payback loops that keep you energetically tied to pain, where you keep reliving something over and over. Look what I did for you. You're so ungrateful. I did all of this for you and you don't even care. They feel powerful, but they poison you slowly. What you mentally rehearse, you emotionally relive. What you mentally rehearse, you emotionally relive. So this right here really gives a lot of credence to the understanding that our thoughts are over top of our emotions. If we focus on something, it grows. The energy flows where the focus goes. If we focus on the same thing over and over, our energy, meaning our emotions, are going to follow. I don't like this. I don't like this. I hate 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 this. We are telling the body, we are sending signals from the mind to the body that you don't like something, give me more. And that is the way the signals work. The signals don't really care about what is thought. It is the actual signal that is coming from the mind that is telling the body to release the corresponding chemical makeup. That is why when I said in previous videos, I am so happy and grateful, I feel the emotions of gratitude. We are telling the mind to release the chemicals of gratitude, of happiness, and then it corresponds, right? Cause and effect. This is on the internal aspect of self. I'm not talking about between you and another person. I feel grateful for you. No, we are talking about using the mind to send the signal to the body. And when we are not self-aware of what it is that we are creating, we can look to other people as the cause. So understanding boundaries here again, guys, is understanding the difference in self and what self is creating and what others on the outside of self are doing that are affecting you. So there has to be a form of balance here and understanding before we really start setting boundaries with people. We must understand what it is and why. This is the power of awareness through self-reflection. So again, the secret is the feeling. And once you understand to change your feeling through your own thought patterns, right? I am so happy and grateful. This does go back to the self-talk aspect. It's, really self-talk is the root of a lot of things. And the other aspect that, when we talk about boundaries, we understand through energy dynamics, right? We all got here by being born. And that means we all got here through our parents having sex. Weird to say it that way, but it's true. So I've read many times in different places for some of my other content around sexual transmutation of energy and the nervous system itself, that we are half mom, half dad, that we ourselves, through our own reproductive system, our brain is the biggest sex organ. It is where all the fantasies originate from. It is where all of the ideas originate from. So there is at the base core level of every single thing, the root of sexual energy. That is how life evolves itself. So evolution of life. And if we get stuck and stunted and can't emotionally grow because of the environment that we are in, where it is like, if you look at a litter of puppies, for example, there's always a runt. There's always that one that has to fight harder than the rest of them to get the nutrients, to get the nourishment from mom, for example. So you can look at it that way in one sense and start to understand that some people can be very young but be very emotionally mature. Some people can be really old and be very emotionally immature. So that really does highlight the difference in the mental state and the emotional state, the emotional filter of the mental picture. I see life through this perception. And it really does highlight a lot, guys. So while I'm sitting here, the last thing I want to point out to you is a basic understanding. I've done this before, and I'm going to try and highlight it again this way. So our right brain and our left brain, right, is known as the logical side, the emotional side. If we take these turntables, for example, we could say the left brain and the right brain. Now, the thought speed, right? Thought moves at the speed of light. Why? Because of the electrical impulses firing in the brain, right? Those little impulses are firing all the time. And again, guys, when we talk about the divine intelligence within every single person, I am talking about those things that happen on a deeper subconscious level. You don't think about your hair growing. You don't think about your fingernails growing. You don't think about that scrape healing itself because it does it automatically. So these things are happening inside of your body. They are happening for you, and you don't have to think about these things. They just are. So there is that other layer of intelligence, divine intelligence that is always within you. We never pay attention to it. But when we stop and start to realize that, wow, these things do happen for me. My cells, my body is constantly dying and rebirthing itself. New cells have to replace old cells. We understand the true magnificence of the human body, and that really does highlight the importance of those boundaries. So if we go back to this understanding that our right brain and our left brain are two different aspects, right? The male and the female aspect. There's a lot of information that out there that backs this up. Even the Neville Goddard teaching in The Feeling is the Secret talks about the conscious brain being the male, the subconscious being the female, the husband and the wife, right? So we understand this in many different aspects, but this right here to me is a great example. If we have the logical aspect of things, but we are emotionally immature, maybe this wheel over here is spinning really fast while this one is spinning really slow. So by this understanding, there is no synchronization between the left and the right brain. The two different hemispheres are operating in different brain waves. So a few years ago when I started this channel, it was like having an aha, this epiphany moment. And it was like this whole cascade of understanding through the imagination in ways that it was hard for me to put in words for other people to understand. Like that term, can you say this in English, please? Can you put this in layman's terms so I can understand it? So I've spent 3 years growing this channel, trying to take what was seen through my imagination and put it into those layman's terms. So if our emotions are turning at one speed, and our mentality or mental conversations or consciousness is at a different speed, there is no synchronization, right? When we look at things and we understand synchronicity, and we are always looking out there and saying, oh, that was a synchronicity. I just caught a repeating number. I just caught this. That's the third time this week that something has happened. That is actually a pattern. But what we never really think about is that connection internally between the left and the right hemispheres. Guess what? The temples, right? Your body is a temple. You have two temples right here. A temple for each side. A temple for the mental, a temple for the emotional. So when we learn to sync these up and they are turning at the same speed, the synchronization becomes harmonized. And we understand through waveform theory that when two waves are in sync with each other, they amplify. This is true for something, whether it's positive or negative. We amplify when something becomes into an alignment. If it is not, then it creates chaos. They try to cancel each other out. So understanding the left and the right brain dynamic on a turntable, for those who are not DJs and don't really know how things work in this sense, you have a crossfader, which controls the volume for each side. If we are in the center and both decks are playing at the same time, then you will hear full volume of both songs playing at the same time. And if they are not synchronized, then it is more distracting, right? It takes more mental energy to try to hone in and separate mentally each song. As a DJ, I understand this, and I'm sure a lot of other DJs out there, if you are watching, would understand this. Being in a loud environment where you're trying to mix and you have different music playing in your headphones from what's being played out there, or you're trying to beat sync something, then you are trying to find that alignment between the tempo, right? Tempo. So left brain, right brain, the pineal gland in the center could be like the crossfader in some sense, where we are trying to balance this out. Actually, if you look at the Monroe Project or the Gateway Project, that was a CIA declassified document, and you start to learn about the hemisynchronization, where they play binaural beats. So that means that there is one tone in one ear, a different tone in the other ear, and the brain tries to make up the difference and synchronize it by creating a third tone. So again, guys, if you look at religion, if you look at almost every denomination, there is some form of Trinity, right? The power of three: the mind, the body, the soul, the Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost. There's this Trinity is repeating everywhere in the universe: positive, negative, neutral. The power of three, guys, I can't understate this enough. The Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost. Positive, negative, neutral, right? So it's all the same, right? To the person on the outside that's listening to a mix, for example, it's all the same. It doesn't matter if it's left or right. What is coming through the center is what is actually heard. So what is coming through the imagination, what is being emotionally filtered, is the perception of reality that we as an individual from our first person view experience. And that is pretty interesting. So guys, boundaries are important. And if you're like me, maybe there's a long portion of your time where you didn't even consider that you needed to set boundaries, or you never really knew what boundaries were, or that you needed them. So I hope that this video creates some kind of context for you, maybe allows you to see things a little bit different than how you may have seen things in the past. It's all about the inner feeling for each individual person and what is creating that. And if not, how do we get to that point of creation where we are creating that feeling of the wish fulfilled within? One of those things is when we do spot things that we don't like, we take our attention away from it and redirect it into another direction. Again, guys, our energy is always going to follow where our focus is put. So what we are magnifying through our imagination, our emotions, is always going to follow. When we sit around and we say that I want X, Y, and Z, but I don't know how to get there, and we start to obsess over what it is that we don't have in place before that can happen, we are creating the condition and magnifying the condition to reaffirm to the body to keep regenerating that feeling of lack, that feeling of despair, that feeling of anxiety, that feeling inside of us. We are still generating it. So if we can refocus our attention somewhere else, then we are diverting away from, like a GPS, recalculating another way to our destination. Me, for example, through many hours of meditation, there's been a lot of people that tell me, well, I don't know how to do this. I can't do this. I've never done that. And for me, doing this for 3 years alone, a part of me wants to call bullshit. The other part of me wants to sit down and say, hey, look, this is how I come to understand it through meditation. When I focus on the feeling, I'm not thinking about the steps I need to take to get there. I am, by definition, through meditation, focusing on what it feels like. And once I attain that feeling, then I focus on that feeling and magnify it. The emotions will follow. And since emotions are energy in motion, guess what? The signals coming from the mind to the body are changing that chemical process. I'm not thinking about those steps, right? Just like I said earlier, you're not thinking about your hair growing. You're not thinking about your fingernails growing. You're not thinking about a cut or a scrape healing itself. It does it automatically. Same thing. I may not have ever been a DJ if I sat around and thought about all the reasons why I couldn't do it. Then I would be self-defeating and self-confirming my belief, my internal belief that I can't. So by definition, you don't know how to do certain things, like dancing. Your body starts to move when you stop thinking, and like the analogy of the dancer becoming one with the music, The dancer is no longer thinking. The dancer is being, is becoming. It is a state of being and allowing the energy to move. Again, guys, the energy itself is intelligent. So you don't have to think. You just have to allow. Allow it to move. Allow it to express itself. And you will find there are things that you said you can never do, you can never overcome. All of a sudden, you have done that and more. So, guys, I want you to know that anything is possible, and learning to have that inner outer boundary for yourself, for your own internal atmosphere in your body, to keep yourself from taking that emotional water in your body and getting angry and turning it into steam and having emotional outbursts and being all over the place. Leave that petty stuff behind. Leave that revenge stuff behind. Just let go. It is for your benefit. Forgiveness is for your benefit. I don't need someone to apologize to me if I feel like I was done wrong. Of course, there have been times where I wish someone would have been an adult and said, hey, you know what? I treated you pretty bad and I feel bad about how I treated you. Yes, there have been times where I really would have liked to have had that. But at the same time, I understand for myself, if I sit around and hold on to the feeling that this person needs to apologize to me, then it is me that is hurt in the long run. It is me that is holding on to those things. So for my personal benefit, it is better for me to redirect my attention and energy away from that so it can dissipate. I am not attached to that outcome any longer. If in a few years or a few days or months or whatever, that person finally comes around and says, hey, you know what? I'm very sorry. It was inappropriate for me to say that to you. It was inappropriate for me to do that to you. It's inappropriate and I apologize. Sometimes that's all it takes. Other times it may be just being able to be big enough to accept the apology and still keep that boundary in place. You cannot always allow people to come back in your life. You can, however, forgive them without the need of them having to apologize. It is for your benefit and your own inner peace and happiness to keep your feelings intact. When someone doesn't apologize and you let go and move on, then they themselves are left with that inside of them. So understand that there are times where people do things intentionally to try to hurt you and seek revenge. There are other times where people may just simply be embarrassed and they can't seem to apologize. It is like the word eludes me at the moment, but if a person can't apologize, there is something internally that is creating that inside of them. So again, for your own individual well-being, it is best to forgive and forget. We forgive so we can forget. And once we forget, we are no longer emotionally attached. That is part of detachment. And with that, guys, I'll see you down the road very soon. Drop some comments. Let me know what you think about this particular video. If it's good, if you like it, and you want to share it with someone else, I would greatly appreciate it. I am so happy and grateful for every one of you out there. Sometimes speaking the truth may feel like you're being negative, but also at the same time, if you hold on to something that is creating discomfort, the symptom is going to be a dis-ease or discomfort of the emotion and feeling within. And with that, guys, I'll see you soon.